Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by the Blue Alliance. Keep up to date on all live and archived First Robotics events and team stats at thebluealliance.com. First Updates Now is brought to you by Twitch. Fun is now a Twitch partner and offering some awesome subscriber-only benefits. Subscribe today or get a free subscription each month when you have Amazon Prime by linking your account and clicking subscribe.
Hey, so it is December 30th, which can only mean one thing. It is CADathon time. The fourth biannual F4 CADathon is bigger than ever, with 84 teams competing and 44 teams submitting finished robots for our fantastic judges to review. 44 teams is over double the size of our last CADathon. As much as I'd love to this show to go into 2018, no one else will. So let's get onto it. I'd like to introduce our judges. We're going to start with Mr. Rip. Just introduce yourself really quickly.
I'm Scott Ripito. I'm with Team 1477. I'm the token old guy.
And we got Anand.
Hey, I'm Anand. I'm from 1072 Harker Robotics. I'm the young guy.
And then we got Brandon.
Hey. Hey, I'm Brandon King. I'm from 4188 Columbus Space Program down in the Peachtree District.
Awesome. So, teams have been giving 3 days to CAD a robot for this year's CADathon game, Fueled Up. In Fueled Up, teams are tasked with scoring fuel cells, which are water bottles, that they obtain from a mine or their human players into their factory zones. Additionally, they were thrown the task of stacking up these foam smokestacks that would give them a 5% bonus to our score. We're going to start with the teams ranked outside the top 15, going in team number order. Then we're going to be doing a giveaway where you can win a $30 voucher courtesy of our sponsor, Aussie Boards. And then we're going to be doing our top 15. So, without further ado, let's get into it, starting with team 63.
Hey, well, I've got Team 63, and it's Robo-Dwarves, which made up of Brian from Team 2386. And it's really an interesting design for the robot. The really outstanding feature on it is that it uses suction system to pick up the fuel cells, which will be interesting to see how well that works out. But it's a very different feature to see.
Absolutely. Definitely a unique robot, and definitely a good job from Brian. Moving on, we have Team 64. Anand, can you talk about them?
I really like this robot. When I first saw it, I was definitely struck by how creative it was, because no one else has really thought to use an arm like this. It did have some weaknesses, mainly that it would reach. It's hard for it not to reach outside the 6-inch limit that we had, and I mean. It had some design flaws in there, but for the most part, it was a really interesting submission right there.
Absolutely. The creativity was definitely strong with this one, and I guess it's from Team 5818 because they put their FRC team number on this robot. So I think that brings us into Team 73.
So Team 73 is the Cheesy Dogs, made up of Mohammed from Team 2052. And basically, it looks like Mohammed started off the easy way with the kit of parts, or sort of similar to the kit of parts drivetrain. He has all the electronics in there, and he went for the bottle strategy, trying to use a roller and belt mechanism on the top of the robot to pick up the bottles once they've fallen over sideways. And if you look at the back of the robot, you'll see an interesting little circular mechanism that's used to drop down and pull over the heavy bottles. Yeah, pretty interesting design.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice that the first time I looked at that robot, but that's a pretty cool feature they got going on there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's going to bring us quickly to Team 80.
So Team 80 is made up of Cat and Cookies himself. And one of the things I like about the robot is it's a very clean look to it. And the strategy for this robot just focused on getting into the mine area and getting bottles and getting back. It's got a double mecanum drive, and it'd be interesting to see how that fares during the season.
Absolutely, that's definitely a slick-looking robot. Right down to the nice little side panels and the black bumpers, doing it right. All right, so that's going to bring us to Team 81.
So Team 81 time zone is made up of Austin from Team 4918 and Spencer from Team 1334. This was a really interesting robot, actually. It had like a really interesting like a HP station thing, and the stacker wasn't too bad. Overall it's pretty solid. One of the main shortcomings was that it didn't have any kind of floor for the things to rest, for the smokestacks to rest on, and that would have been a big challenge for them to overcome. But the way they seemed to handle bottles was interesting. Like it probably would have worked pretty well in competition.
Yeah, that's really cool. It looks like a nice looking robot. It looks pretty well CADed. And overall, I think it was a good submission from Austin and Spencer. So that's going to bring us to Team 88.
So Team 88, the Speedy Dreamy Mimi Teamy, is made up of Emily from 771 and Asha from 865. And it looks like what they did for their design was they have a mechanism that drops down with rollers that is used to pull in the bottles that they can then, I guess, drive off and score those. And they also have a nice tall lift mechanism that they used to stack up the cans. And they have, I think the one issue that I had with this robot when I was looking at it was they're missing some of the electronics. So it's something that's normally pretty important to add in there somewhere.
All right. Well, no matter what, they definitely got the name award. We'll give them that one.
For sure.
All right, that's going to transition us to Team 89.
So Team 89 is Cyborg CADs made up of Sam and Luke from Team 4256. This robot's called Strafe Miner. It's interesting design. It's got a feature that only one other robot, and you'll see this robot later in the top 15, but it's got this feature where it can kind of sort its way through the mine on the sides. And that way it can move out some of the lower scoring elements and get to the higher scoring elements a little quicker. So that was a neat feature of this robot. And it's got it on both sides, so it can come at it from either direction. It's a really solid built robot, nice and low, and should be able to move quickly around the field.
Yeah, I really like the drivetrain they put onto that one. All right, so that's going to transition us to Team 90. Nans, could you talk about Team 90? You did.
Oh, sorry. Team 90 Lamped is made up of Justin from 1414 and Salahuddin from 1374 and Sismon from 5883. Really an interesting robot. Had a lot of really nice fancy lightning patterns in there, but not fancy to the point of being bad, right? One of the main weaknesses with this design was that the drivetrain, although it was really, really interesting drivetrain, nice shifting gearbox there, was somewhat weak because of the lack of a belly pan, and the rigidity of the arms and the bottle intake were questionable. But with some polishing, would have been a very, very, very good robot. Still could be, actually.
Yeah, definitely a slick-looking robot. I really dig the whole bottle mechanism they have going there. I think with some tuning, that could have been a top 15 competitor for sure. And that's going to bring us to Team 91.
So Team 91, the Stewie Plus, is made up of Piotr and Levi and Navid from Team 694. So this team, basically, they made a nice tall mechanism in the front of the robot that they used to stack up a really tall stack. And the one thing that I was looking at was they do have chain in the middle to lift it up, but it's kind of iffy to see how it's mounted to the bars, like the actual vertical frame of the elevator. They also had a extending mechanism that goes just beyond the bumpers to pull in the bottles that uses belts and a simple like pulley system. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. I could see rigidity also being a problem there. But again, this is another one where I think just a little more tuning, and they could have been somewhere. And that's going to bring us to Team 94.
So Team 94 is good enough. It's made up of Joshua from Team 3161. First of all, it's a beautiful rendering of the robot. It's just so clean and everything. But like most of the robots we've been talking about, it's really just a miner and gets in there and tries to pick up 3 fuel cells. It has an extendable arm that comes out of an intake mechanism. And my biggest concern is I'm just a little bit worried about the size of the pneumatics that are there to pull up that arm, and then the way that they're supported, those pneumatics at the back end. They're just single 1x1s on each side. And I think over the course of an FRC season, just from my own experience, those pneumatics are going to get bent, and those supports are going to give way over time. But really enjoyed the robot. Nice 6-wheel drive system.
Yeah, totally. No, this was definitely an awesome submission. And that's going to bring us to Team 96.
So Team 96, Parge, made up of Prajwal and Daniel from Team 6325. This robot actually struck me as pretty interesting because it had this this very, not super clean, but pretty clean 80-20 kind of mechanism, and it had interesting gear rack and can stacker stabilizer deal. It did have a few flaws in it, but the overall idea was very, very creative, actually, the way they handled everything. It was missing a lot of 80-20 kind of gussets, and it's missing a lot of spacers and structure, and especially with the drivetrain, it's basically just plates, so it's not super duper strong, but very, very creative design. I liked it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, they have some pretty sweet purple bumpers going as well. That's going to bring us to Team 100.
So Team 100, the Robobots, is made up of Nathan from Team 5338. And Nathan went for a pretty simple design here. He basically made his robot a tall vertical cube that he's going to use to collect the fuel in. He has a slot in the top so that the human player can drop the fuel in through the top. And he also has a big ramp at the bottom with a roller that he can use basically to drive straight into a pile of fuel cells and try to pick them up that way and then go to deliver them into the scoring area.
Yeah, no, I actually really like this robot because I think it was a very good example of what you could do with just a very small amount of resources, and would be a very good robot in terms of competition just because it can go right up to the human player station, get some oil, and dump it right into the factory zone. Definitely a good submission. And that's going to bring us to Team 105.
So Team 105 is Atlas and Peabody. It's made up of Jessica and Sejun from Team 2601. Basically a kitbot chassis, like an IndyMark kitbot chassis. One of the first robots that I've reviewed here that has a mechanism for doing a smokestack. It also has a pickup mechanism on the backside for collecting bottles out of the mining area. The robot not quite finished, need a little bit more work to get done. Otherwise, it would have ranked higher, maybe broke into the top 15.
Yeah, totally. That nice little spring mechanism looks pretty cool. I'd like to see that in action. Next one, bring us to Team 107.
So Team 107, Panther Robotics Alpha, is made up of Max, Gabe, and Aaron from Team 3863. Pretty interesting robot. I like the acronym Panther Operating System, POS. Very interesting robot. So the bottle mechanism was quite nice, but it did lack the ability to do. Am I looking at the same robot? Yeah, it did lack the ability to do HP station very well, which is kind of a minus, but not horrible. There's lots of robots that did that, and the stacking mechanism was also very interesting. I liked how tall it was, so it could like place smokestacks on top of other ones if it needed to. One of the main things that I did not like is that the elevator relied on side loading your cylinder shafts, which is pretty much instant bending. So that was not good. I saw a lot of robots actually did that. And the stack stabilization could use a bit of finessing right there. But could have been a very, very capable HP station fuel runner because of the way their intake works. So, and they have a shifting gearbox, so if they used it right, it could be very, very useful.
Yeah, this was definitely another one that was super close to breaking in the top 15, but a couple little issues here and there kept it right out. And that's going to bring us to Team 110.
So Team 110 is called It Ain't Right Without Nick, and it is made up of Enrique and Michael from 3250. And it looks like the main point they went after for this game was going for the smokestacks. They have a mechanism that is pretty similar to a lot of the intake mechanisms for totes from 2015. They have rollers on the side and the front gap of the robot, and it just pulls the cans straight into the claw, which is on a fairly tall lift mechanism. And on the back of the robot, they have a little tiny claw that they use to pick up the top of the water bottles right around the neck. And that right there looks like a pretty major issue for me. Of course, it's probably not their primary goal in this design challenge, but the way that they pick up the water bottles is really, really hard to align, I guess, for the drivers. But overall, other than that, it's a really sleek looking design.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's going to bring us to team 116.
Which is hashtag no internet, is made up of Solomon from team 2898. Had to catch myself because that was a pound sign to me. So no laughing. So anyway, this is a really interesting robot because it's basically got two independent arms on each side for stacking up the smokestack. And that was my big concern about it. I mean, I'd really like to see the robot in action. I mean, if everything was set right, it'd be interesting to watch it building these stacks. But it's got left and right sides that are basically independent of each other. And so you're going to have to rely on encoders and sensors to make sure that everything stays together. But otherwise, this robot's capable of building some tall stacks and maybe bulldozing a few fuel cells into the scoring area.
Yeah, for sure. And this team really did have no internet. He was doing this on a vacation in Hawaii and uploaded the robot through his cell phone. So that's going to bring us to team 117.
So team 117 is Meme Dream Team. That's my personal favorite. Made up of Ben from 5568. Pretty interesting robot. The description, when I read it, was like, oh, we got carbon fiber and also the cool stuff. And when I looked at it, it actually did look pretty cool. I like how they had the covers around everything slot nicely into that 80/20. And they were one of the few teams that used 80/20 that put all of the details in. And I was very impressed with that. One thing that wasn't that great was that they said it was like a carbon fiber swerve, but it wasn't clear exactly what was carbon fiber, and that was kind of weird. I think it looked like an anti-mark swerve and steer, and also it might have been outside the bounds, but with the use of carbon fiber and stuff like that, I think it was very interesting, even if it wasn't fully capitalized on.
Yeah, for sure, it was definitely a robot with, again, maybe more than one team member could have done well and had some more detail thrown into it. So that's going to bring us to team 118.
So team 118, not the Robonauts, the Design Central team made up of Andrew and Thomas from team 100. This robot has a long arm with a claw on the end that looks sort of like some of those inner tube claws from back in the day. And basically they use that claw to grab the cans and stack up a tall smokestack. And on the other side of the robot, they have another roller mechanism that can intake a few fuel cells, the water bottles, and deliver those to the scoring area.
Yeah, definitely a slick-looking robot, and it could have, with, again, some more tuning and definitely some good programming, do pretty well in this game. That's going to bring us to team 121.
So 121 is Panther Robotics Beta. It's made up of Jacob and Nathan from team 3863. And it's got a fairly standard elevator on it mechanism for stacking up the smokestack on one side, and on the other it's got an arm that can swing out and scoop up some fuel cells. My concern with the arm in this case is I'm not sure what will happen if those fuel cells start getting knocked over. And so one drawback of this design, but just looking at how much is there, this robot should be really light and really fast, so it could do some damage until the mine is messed up.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe it can switch to smokestacks for a little bit. And that brings us to team 123. Muted? Huh? Muted?
Team 123, Promethean, is made up of Prajwal and John from team 3140. Sorry. Pretty interesting robot. It was fairly well detailed. And I would probably choose this as like a second pick at a regional or district event. Maybe choosing that at a district event. A very cool looking robot for sure. The drivetrain actually looked pretty robust as well, which I was a big fan of. The main problem with it is that the bottle mechanism is a little bit like iffy. It's not bad, but it is a little bit iffy, and it would be unsure. Like if the bottle comes in sideways, it might jam. So that was one thing that I didn't like too much about this, but it was very well detailed CAD and pretty well thought out. Like everything was in there. I did like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely a nice looking robot. Could tell a lot of work was put into it. And that's going to bring us to Team 130.
So Team 130, 108 AZ is made up of Angel from Team 108, which actually happens to be one of the teams that my team won the Peachtree Regional with back in 2015. It's kind of random, but yeah. This is a pretty simple looking robot design. It uses a roller mechanism on the front of the robot to pull in the fuel cells, and then as it delivers them over to the scoring area, looks like it uses a Thunder Hex rod on some sort of motor mechanism to basically lift the rollers out of the way and then back up so it can drop them off on the floor, leave them there. I do like how the bumpers are mounted on this, where you can just, basically the bumpers are one full assembly that slide in with bolts that probably protrude from the bumper. That's a pretty useful design.
Yeah, definitely something the pit crew is going to thank you for with some match turnaround times. All right, that's going to bring you to Team 131.
Team 131 is the Vikings, made up of Ethan and Jeremy from Team 8. And like the Panther Robotics beta robot that I was just talking about, it has a similar mechanism for pulling fuel cells out of the mine area that swings down and can get them while they're standing up. But once those fuel cells gets knocked down, this robot would go to the human player station and basically has a trough that tilts up pneumatically, can take 3 of the oil fuel cells and then run them to the scoring area. It's a nice small robot, well powered, looks light. So I think this robot's going to be doing a lot of cycles and would be an excellent second or third robot on an alliance.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's going to bring us to Team 138.
So Team 138, the Catting Eagles, is made up of Connor from Team 1360. This was an interesting robot. It was basically just a cool take on a kit of parts chassis with a special bottle manipulator. In terms of creativity, it wasn't great, but the way they were trying to do the linkage on the arm. It doesn't look like they finished, but the way they're trying to do the linkage on the arm was very interesting, and I don't think we've seen much of that. A lot of the like intakes for bottles and things were like rollers, but this would be one of the few that I would say could have succeeded as a bottle mechanism. I like the detail though. Even though they didn't have too much in the way of mechanisms, they did put everything in there, and I mean all the electronics made sense, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Another one with some pretty nice looking bumpers. All right, that's going to bring us to Team 147.
So Team 147, CAD Army, is made up of Bryce from Team 2471. And this is one of the most interesting lift mechanisms that I've seen in this competition. It has a 6-stage elevator lift that is used to basically extend upward and stack all the way up to 12 cans high for the smokestack. And unfortunately, it does look like there's a pretty high chance it's going to extend outside of the 6-inch limit past the frame perimeter. But it is a really cool looking mechanism, and yeah, sleek looking design.
Yeah, for sure. And fun fact, that was the Bryce that judged the last CADathon. So that's going to bring us to Team 149.
So this robot is 2 a.m. and it's made up of a team of Anika and Micah from Team 2898. And a couple of things about this robot. I mean, primarily it looks like its purpose is for stacking. It has a regular elevator type lift. It has a couple of bars that are there to stabilize the elevator mechanism. And, it's something that we've done in the past where we always think in right angles, but you start thinking at angles like slants, you can save some weight and actually make the support a little bit stronger. One other thing about this robot is the side bumpers aren't supported correctly. You need there's about a 14-inch gap, 12-inch gap along one side. But beside that, it's a really good robot, the nice drive system. Not sure how tall the stacks could get. That just would remain to be seen. And I guess it herds fuel cells into the scoring area.
All right. That's going to bring us to our last team outside of the top 15, and that's Team 154.
Team 154, the Ocho, is made up of Brian and Jacob from Team 8. Team 8's actually a local team, so that's pretty neat. I did like this robot. I thought it was a good idea. They had the tall elevators to do stack stabilization, and they had a stacker. And I remember this one having an interesting bottle mechanism because it was designed around gripping, not even gripping the bottle, but like kind of carrying the bottles and having a pneumatic release for them, which I think was a nice thought. It did have some shortcomings, like I believe this was one of the robots that, so the stabilization wasn't that good on it because they surrounded the smokestacks, but they didn't actually stabilize them. And they needed to go forward and backwards in order to release the smokestacks, which isn't great. They did mention they could mine uranium, and I think the mechanism was powerful enough to do that, but getting there would have been a challenge for this robot.
Absolutely. All right, so that's going to bring us to our top 15. And in the 15 spot, we have Team 144, which is made up of Arpit and Pratik from Team 226. The genius of the Hammerheads designed their robots to quickly cycle oil fuel from the HP station while using their multi-stage lift to transport smokestacks. So we're going to start with Brandon. Now we're going to go in sort of a roundtable discussion kind of thing. How do you feel about this robot?
So right off the bat, I can tell this is a really well-designed robot. It has a lot of really interesting features. One of the things that sort of caught my eye that might be a little bit weak in the long run, or like if it got hit or anything, is the arm, where it's just a 1-inch by 2-inch tube that's essentially holding the entire weight of that arm, and that is mounted to a lengthy hex rod. Something in there looks like it's probably going to bend under much weight, and when it starts like getting torqued around, that kind of thing. But overall, this is a really, really well-designed robot.
Absolutely. Anyone else? What do you have feedback for Team 144?
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I was also a little bit concerned about just how heavy that whole intake pickup mechanism is as I watch it trying to pivot on that axle. And then looking at the geometry and trying to think how well it's going to handle picking up the bottled fuel cells. I just like to see that. I think it could be really good at it. It just kind of comes at it at a little bit different angle than some of the other machines. But it was an excellent job with the CAD and really well put together.
All right. Anand, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing that I noticed about this that was weird was that I think the bottles could come out the sides of the roller claw, which was I don't think that was intended, but I think that could happen. And the other thing is that because of the taper on the smokestacks, I'm not too sure where the stacker would work too well. So I did like the detail in the CAD. I did like the detail, and I did like the creativity. I like the big arm, but it had some robustness issues that might have been hard to fix down the line as well. Like they have versaplanetary gussets, like the right angle ones, holding the arm gearboxes on to rotate the arm, and those would have been had a lot of high load on them. So I'm not sure if they would have lived that well. But overall, very interesting robot.
All right, so that's going to kick us to the 14th spot where you have Team 150. Team 150, last minute, made up of Cyrus and Griffin from Team 8. Team 150 created a ultra-tall 12 smokestack stacking robot with an additional horizontal intake for fuel. So, Mr. Rip, how do you feel about Team 150?
So I was, again, looking at the intake mechanism. I was trying to figure out exactly how well the bottles are going to come in and get handled by that for the fuel cells. I did like that the stacking mechanism is made so that as you pick up more and more of the smokestack pieces, the tower expands and gets taller and taller, and that keeps it stable, which is an issue with some of the other robots that we've been looking at. I was trying to figure out exactly how the geometry works for the tube inside of a tube. So that would be a little bit interesting to just kind of see how that goes. With all these robots, just so people kind of understand when we're looking at them, one of the things we're looking at is how thorough the CAD is done, and all these robots, 15 on up, just did a fantastic job of filling in all the details that they needed. So you felt like you were looking at a finished robot.
Absolutely. So anyone else have any feedback for Team 150?
Yeah, it's pretty similar comments for me. I think when it does extend all the way up, it's going to be really top heavy. And if that robot moves just a little bit too fast, there's a very high chance of it just falling over, which no one has fun falling over during a match. And one of the other things, the way that they have bolts basically sliding in a 1/4 inch slot on the side of the tube as the actual lift slider is probably going to bind at some point. It doesn't really look like it's gonna be very smooth going up and down. I don't know. That's just speaking from experience. Probably gonna happen.
All right. So I guess that, or no, do you want to add anything?
No, I just want to say the intake looks kind of like 2016 intakes. It just very much reminded me of what 2016 ball intakes looked like, and it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe they just took their CAD and threw it in there. Got to save some time. All right, so that brings us to the 13th spot, which is Team 108, Rivet Designs, made up of Eric from Team 1768. They created a simple fuel scoring robot with an active intake with compliant wheels to make sure to get everything nice and well secured. So, Anand, how do you feel about this one?
I liked it. I thought the strategy, when I was reading through this, I thought the strategy was actually very interesting. The idea of spinning around. Nobody else actually mentioned that, but looking at it, I think that it would actually be very good at doing that. The sharp bumpers are probably just for show, but realistically, if they were sharp, they would probably do a good job. The intake roller was interesting, a lot like 1114's robot from 2015 with the double tiered rollers. Pretty interesting. I'm not sure how well they would fare picking up down Nalgenes and things like that, but I mean overall, just the idea of just spinning around very quickly, busting through the mines and getting to the uranium. I think this is one of the few robots that actually did have a plan in mind on how to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also looks robust enough to handle some of the uranium things, which are about 25 pounds. Anyone else have any other feedback for them?
I think one of the scary things about this robot is the way that the actual frame is put together. The rigidity of it, basically they have a plate on either side of the wheel, on each side of the robot, but the only thing connecting those two plates is the rods that are actually going through the wheel. It doesn't look like there's anything actually connecting them together to keep it sturdy. So that could become an issue.
Mr. Rupp, anything to add?
No, not really. They hit the same things I was looking at.
All right. So that's going to bring us to the 12th ranked team, Team 99, the Fake Real Fake team, which is made up of Bryce and Yoel from Team 1836. They designed a robot to cycle oil and stack smokestacks with their single stage lift. So, Brandon, how do you feel about this one?
I think this is a pretty clean design. Overall, it looks like it's a pretty efficient score from the human player slot, and I believe this stacker is basically meant to stack directly from the human player station and then take a stack of 4 cans directly over to the scoring area. I'm pretty sure it doesn't lift off the ground, unfortunately, but for what it is, it's pretty good looking.
Absolutely. Anand, do you have any feedback? Muted.
This is one of my personal favorite robots because they had the flaps in front to stop a pretty good stabilizer. Basically, they had a pretty good stabilizer, and they had 2 of them, which was unique. Their bottle dumper thing was super simple, but I looked at it and I was like, oh, no other team has this, and also it looked like it would actually work pretty well. So, and then I looked more into it, and the detail was all there. They were missing a couple major screws, but I mean, nothing that they couldn't fix down the line. And the way they lifted the stack from the bottom was also something that was really, really rare for some reason. So, yeah, big fan of this robot.
Mr. Rupp, do you have anything to add?
Well, I look at that arm that sticks up for the basket to catch fuel cells, and I like that I saw gussets down at the bottom wide enough that it looked like it would keep it stiff, as it goes through a match. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. I really like the whole floor being underneath the smokestacks, just because I think a lot of people underestimated the amount of friction, being that the smokestacks are made of closed cell foam and are going to be rubbing up against carpet. So the floor was definitely something I really enjoyed about this robot. So that's going to bring us to Team 158. Team 158, the Battle Bites, is made up of Jacob from 4561. The merger machine, designed by Team 158, was designed to only handle smokestacks, actually, with 2 lifts. The robot creates 2 6-stacks, which are later merged into a 12-stack once they are in their factory. Mr. Rip, how do you feel about this one?
Well, I mean, when I first saw this robot, I mean, I'd love to see it in action just because it's got so many moving parts to it. And if it's all timed right, it would just be beautiful to watch. Kind of remind me of in 2015, watching some of the robots that were so good at automatically stacking totes. That would also be kind of my concern because of all the moving parts that it has. So it's one of those machines that would have to be tuned just so it runs well. But the renders and the CAD were beautiful on this robot.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, any feedback?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool how they basically take 6 cans and a smokestack, and once that stack is finished, they just put it into the front of the robot and then start another stack on top of it or right behind it. And once those are both finished, they put them together in the scoring area. I don't think any other teams did that. That was a really unique design.
Yeah, for sure. Anand, anything?
Yeah. What I found interesting about this one is that I felt like it was lacking a little bit in strategic analysis because the stack itself, I mean, it's only worth maximum 60% extra points, right? But the way this works out is that nobody can really afford to have this robot except for like the top alliances at regionals. So it's basically forced into being a 3rd pick because of the fact that it can only do a multiplier. So I thought that was like really, even if it wasn't intended, it was very, very, very good. And probably one of the best stackers in the CADathon just because they actually planned it out. Like they thought a lot about how they're going to do this.
Yeah, definitely. They realized that 12 smokestacks stacked on top of each other is really, really tall. So transporting it half and half is a very efficient way to do it. So that's going to bring us to Team 109, the Wheel Deal, made up of Ethan and Eric and Ivan from Team 1360. Team 109's robot named Snoop Dogg is intended to cycle 3 oil and 4 cans at a time between the feeder station and the factory. Brandon, how do you like this one?
I think this is a really cool looking design. Their renders are beautiful, for one thing. I like how they basically in the design, like everywhere, they have really little details. Of course, they do have the regular mechanisms. They have the roller intake on one side for the bottles, and then they have the lift and claw on the other side for the smokestacks. But what really made this robot stick out to me was the details. Everywhere they had like the pocketing in the tubes and in the sheet metal everywhere. Really brought it together for me.
Yeah, for sure. Nan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, +1 to everything that Brandon said. It was a very clean robot, very, very clean robot. The only thing that was interesting to me is that the top speed of like I think it said 24 feet per second was probably a little bit too fast, given that like it looked fairly heavy, not like super heavy, but fairly heavy. I like the bottle intake. That was really clever. Whether or not it would work, that's something you find out in testing. But I mean, they have some space to add a different one.
Mr. Rip, how do you feel about it? Oh,
just like Brandon said, the render on this is just amazing, and the detail, all the pocketing in the 1x2s and in the belly pan and everything, just a beautiful robot to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And then, was there anything else you wanted to finish up with?
No, that's about it.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's going to bring us to Team 98. Team 98 is made up of Esme from Team 3128, Jacob from Team 4738, and Landon from Team 6090. With an incredibly tall lift, Team 98's robot was designed to create a stable smokestack stack while also having the possibility of picking up 2 fuel at a time. So, Scott, how do you feel about this one?
Well, one thing when I first looked at this robot, I was looking at the intake system for the bottles and trying to figure out how it holds. I mean, it looks like it could get 1 for sure, maybe 2, but it seems like you're going to need 3 bottles, 3 fuel cells, and cycling those to do well. And I just wasn't sure how that intake mechanism was going to do that. But on the other hand, I love the way that they have basically flaps catted in it, and because you just don't see that kind of detail very often where that's done that way. Also really enjoyed the lift mechanism for stacking and the way that it was designed and how complete that it was. Moving a stack of 12 is going to be difficult. And so, I mean, they have a solution for doing that. It'd be interesting to see how well that plays out.
For sure. Anand, how do you feel about this one?
I like the stabilizer. I'm just a big fan of all the stackers in this competition, honestly. I love the stackers. The star-shaped wheels are unique, and yeah, I wasn't sure either how they would exactly pick up more than one or two, but I think that they could deflect enough, the fingers could deflect enough that it would let it do at least two. Stabilizer is interesting, but I don't know, they didn't make too many allowances for how it would actually drop off the stack, so if it was tilting against the stabilizer at the start, it might just fall over when they dropped it, but probably not. It was very solid overall.
Brandon, anything to add?
I really like their use of the 775 redline motors on their intake.
Got to keep the color scheme going, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to the 8th ranked team, Team 102, VTOL, made up of Kian from Team 5663. Team 102's primary strategy is to attack the mine for fuel and score up to 4 stacks of smokestack if needed for the Alliance. So, Anand, how do you feel about this guy?
I like their stacker because it could hold 4 and stabilize 4 and just do that really, really well. So it's just instant 20 points just out of the HP station. Their bottle mechanism was like questionable. Like I mean, I can easily see a lot of bottles falling over in the mine very quickly. But worst case, they could easily HP station 3 of them. And I mean, the 20% extra just from having the mechanism there was, I think, a big part of it.
Mr. Rupp, how do you feel about it?
I had the same concern about the intake mechanism. I thought the design was interesting. It kind of reminded me of something that we did one year for Best Robotics with the slots, and we just didn't have rollers. In that case, the bottles were held very stably, the way they were located. They just couldn't move around, and that's a concern I have with the mining area, is that this robot might struggle with that a little bit. But as far as the stacking mechanism, should really do a good job with that.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, anything you want to add to this one?
Just +1 to the things that the other guy said, and I think the key word for this robot is simplicity, that kind of thing. It's a pretty easy design to get done if you're like a medium level team without like super extensive capabilities, I guess, machining wise. It's something that most teams would be able to do for the most part, it looks like.
Absolutely. All right, so that brings us to the 7th ranked team, Team 157, Minotaur. It's made up of Isaac, Gavin, and Ramsey from Team 1369. They have a low-bar compatible robot, which is designed to handle only fuel in the horizontal configuration, and it's designed to cycle it quickly into the factory zone. So, Brandon, how do you feel about this one?
So this robot, of course, as you can see, it does only focus on the fuel, the actual bottles themselves. They have really nice looking renders, and I think this is, so the strategy that they went after, it looks like what they're going to do is pick up the fuel, the bottle off the floor, cycle it through the robot, and then sort of dump it out the back of the robot once it gets over to the scoring station. Since they are doing that, one of the rules was like you can't launch fuel, basically, similar to this year where you can't launch fuel outside of your own launch pad, that kind of thing. So they would just have to kind of like dump it out slowly. But yeah, it's a really cool looking robot.
All right. Mr. Rupp, you have anything to add?
Yeah, Brandon brought up the launching fuel, and I asked about that question because I missed it when I read the rules the first time. And I just had this vision of wood chipper working its way through the mine and just flinging out bottles out the back end, which I still would like to see it do because I think it would look cool. So,
yeah.
One of the problems that these robots that are dealing with the bottles and they just pick them up and put them inside is that they're only allowed to pull one uranium and one of the gas. And as we'll see with some of the robots later, they've got to have a way of distinguishing between those. So that would be one drawback here. But I like this robot because of the small size, how compact it is, and how I think it'd just be fun to operate, get in that mine and mess things up.
For sure. Anand, anything to add?
I thought it was probably the coolest idea in theory, and I think probably the best robot, the only robot that really had a plan for how to get to the uranium and like had a really good plan, right? But I don't think it would have worked that well purely because the bumpers are on the left and right. So although it might be able to suck in from the center, it would probably pretty quickly just get stuck like halfway in, and I was pretty sad about that. But it was probably the most visually stunning robot out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I think that's going to move us to the sixth ranked team, which is Team 119, Max, made up of Christopher from Team 1072. I think Anon knows a little bit about that team. The Max robot consisted of a smokestack stacker in the front and a fuel chute in the back to cycle between the HP station and the factory. Mr. Ritt, how about you handle this one?
Well, first, CAD, beautiful on the robot. I mean, just looking at it and the detail on everything is pretty amazing. Looks like it could be a little bit top heavy once it gets the builds that 12 stack. I like that it had on the backside the kind of a slot for the fuel cells to come in, so you could go to the human player station and get some fuel cells while you're doing the stack and then deliver those. And then it had some stabilizers on the side connecting the stacking mechanism to the fuel cell magazine, if you will. So I thought that was add a lot of stability to the robot. So good looking machine. I think it would do well. It may not be able to do 12. I mean, 12 is going to be questionable for a lot of robots, but for a 12 stack, but it's going to do well in the competition.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, how do you feel about this guy?
I think Tyler's working on getting the correct picture up there. We had the wrong one accidentally, but yeah, 119, I thought it was a really sleek design. There we go. So yeah, overall, I think this is probably going to be one of the robots that performs the best in competition. The way that it intakes directly from the human player station for the bottles and for the cans, and it can still do a full 12 stack, which is really impressive. It looks like it's an all-around fantastic design.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Anon, don't beat up Leafy too hard. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I came into this like with a lot of like sadness because I was very prepared to beat up Chris over this one, but it actually turned out pretty good. I did like it. I thought it would be probably among like top 3 or 4 for performance somehow. I mean, I don't know. I thought someone else did it, but he did a good job. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I liked it. I liked the HP bottle station thing. I really liked the way they stacked 4 and the way it was realistically. They're like, we're probably not going to get 12. I like that, knowing your own limits. One thing that was weird was on their elevator brake, which they may or may not need. They had cylinders basically being side-loaded with a lot of force from those brakes. So I'm pretty sure that they would have busted up a cylinder a match at that point, which is bad. But apart from that, I did like the robot.
All right. So we're popping into our top 5 here with Team 60. Glorified VersaFrame, made up of Marcus from Team 1836 and Jason from Team 5818. Glorified VersaFrame created a mini fuel cycling robot meant to speed between the HP station and the factory zone, and did so in style. Brandon, how do you feel about this one?
I think this is a really cool looking robot. It's one of those things that reminds me a lot of all the off-season robots that we're seeing this year, actually, where they're really small and they focus on the main objective of the game. In this case, it's the bottles, and it's something that's made to go all the way across the field as fast as possible without being really open to defense. They just go right past them. They have omni wheels on all 4 corners so that they can't be like side pinned in the middle of the field. And strategically, this is a really, really good robot design.
Yeah, for sure. Nan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, +1 to the strategy thing. I think they spent the most time on strategy out of any team, and they gave a really solid analysis of it in their write-up. Loved that. Yeah, probably one of the best robots in competition, I would think, out of the whole CADathon. Everything was super detailed. They had a really solid strategy, and they designed the robot completely right. It actually resembles their Marcus's off-season robot a bit, or a lot actually, just the way it's constructed. So I liked it.
Mr. Rip, anything you want to add?
Well, I do want to add this was pretty much my favorite robot of all the robots, just based on kind of the idea of this little tiny robot. I was lucky enough to watch 148's little robot running around at the remix, and it was just crazy fast watching that thing go back and forth. And if you take the battery and bumpers off this robot, I mean, how much do you think it weighs? 30 pounds, maybe 35. I mean, it's just tiny. So it'd just be cool to watch this robot running around the field and see what it does, zipping back and forth. So I love it. Love this robot.
All right. So that's going to bring us to Team 134, who got the 4th rank in this competition. Team 134, Valor, is made up of Cole and Gabriel from Team 6800. Now, if you're going on the Blue Alliance really quickly, you might notice that Team 6800 hasn't actually competed yet. They are a pre-rookie team. So Cole and Gabriel have never done FRC. They have no FRC experience, and they counted this thing. These students designed an interesting ISO-grid pocketing-packed robot that features a multi-stage lift along with an intake for fuel and ability to create a really tall smokestack. Mr. Rip, how do you feel about this one?
So if this is Team 6800, is that I think it's the team from north of Austin a little bit.
Possibly, yeah.
And if it is, calling, I mean, they are rookie bots. They competed a lot in the off season, and their robots, the robot they had in the off season was beautiful. And so I don't know why I missed that earlier. This was Team 6800, but just think of this. This is a group of rookies putting together a team. They were big in FTC. This robot's got a lot of good stuff going for it. It's got the mechanism for taking the bottles in from the feed slot from the human player station. Little interested in how the stacking mechanism works and to see how that all articulates. But the CAD on this robot is just incredible. My biggest question is the weight of the robot, because you do see a lot of material up above the drive train. So that'd be my biggest concern, and I just didn't have an opportunity to check that out.
Yeah, for sure. How do you feel about this one?
When I first saw it, I was like, and I was looking through it, and I don't think I'd be able to make this in 3 days. Like, I don't know many people that could. So this was extremely impressive, like just CAD wise. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the only thing I got to say about this. Everything else pretty much the same. It might have trouble with fuel not going into the intake as easily, but probably not. Like, it's a might. So very interesting.
Have to build it and test it out, right?
Yeah.
All right,
exactly.
Brandon, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think they summed it up pretty well. I do like that they went for the swerve. Being a rookie team might be a little bit iffy if they try to do that in season, but if they can pull it off, cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that is between our 4th and 3rd ranked team, which means it is time for the Aussie Boards voucher giveaway. So if you want to enter this giveaway, you need to enter 775 Pro with no spaces into the chat. I believe if you're a subscriber, you're going to get 3 entries into the giveaway. Is that right, Tyler? 5? 5 entries into the giveaway. So might as well just subscribe really quickly and enter the giveaway. And then when we are done with the top 3, we will release the winner to it. So 775 Pro in the chat with no spaces, so you could possibly win a $30 voucher to use in the Aussie Boards website. Yeah, Aussie Boards really came through with this one. All right, that brings us to the number 3 robot, which is Team 25, What Coast. It's made up of Devin from Team 1982 and Daniel from Team 1984. They took a heavy influence from Simbot Sideswipe, and Team 25 created a Kiwi drive with a simple stacking mechanism and 2 fuel intakes on either side of the robot with some active feeding. So, Anand, how do you feel about Team 25?
When I first saw it, very visually stunning. Probably in the top 3 for that. And I did like that they had they're another team that had a plan to get to the uranium. That was also quite great. I was questioning the effectiveness of how well they would actually be able to make it work, just because pushing things like that with the round rollers on the outside of the robot on one side is usually pretty questionable. But I mean, I like that they thought of that, and I also like the way that they have the little fuel intake flywheels. But I mean, given that the throwing fuel thing is illegal, they'd have to be very careful to watch out how they're handling any kind of coal things.
Yeah, when it's the lighter bottles, it might go pretty far. Mr. Rip, how do you feel about this one?
Well, this robot, the Kiwi drive for me really makes sense for this competition with trying to get into the mining area. you looked at robot after robot that we were just reviewing and how all of them were these, squares and rectangles. These guys came up with a triangular design that really lets them get into that mining area and do some damage to get to the higher scoring bottle. So I think a lot of teams, could take some notes from that and just think about, doing that in the future. I'm often guilty of that too. Is you got 120 inches of perimeter, you try to use it all, and so here these guys are, just thinking outside the box, literally outside the box, and thinking triangle instead. So I like that aspect of it. That was probably my favorite part, and the fact that it had all the rollers and could move the fuel cells around while you're working in that mining area. Kind of interested in seeing how the stacking works, mechanism at the top of that. Just wasn't sure quite how that was going to work out for them, but a lot of detail in the robot. Like I said, I just love the drive system and seeing something really different there.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, how do you feel about this one?
I really did like the uniqueness of this robot. It was really cool how they went for the Kiwi style drive. One of my favorite parts actually was that they used a camera right beside the fuel pickups on the sides of the robot. I guess 2 of the 3 sides, and they used that camera to actually, I guess, look at the color of the bottle and to get rid of the lower value ones and hang on to the higher value ones so they can make sure they score the most points possible. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a really cool thing, and being in the number 3 spot, this earned Devin and Daniel a $20 gift card or voucher to Aussie Boards. Again, big thank you to Alistair and the Aussie Boards crew for putting together this and allowing the top 3 teams to get something a little more tangible for putting many, many hours of work into creating these robots over 3 days. All right, so that brings us to the second-ranked team, and that is Team 8. CADathon, who is made up of Rafi and Nadanel from Team 449. And Colin from Team 1710. So although teasing a 16 NIDAC motor drivetrain on Chief Delphi, Team 8's final robot looked very different from this teaser. With a multi-stage lift for smokestacks and a large fuel intake for their robot, they would have a commanding presence on any field. Their ideal strategy being cycling 3 to 4 stacks of smokestacks along with 3 fuel and finally attacking the mine near the end of the match would prove to be pretty fruitful in the eyes of our judges. So, Mr. Rip, how do you feel about this one?
This robot reminded me also of 118 stacking mechanism and just being able to watch this thing work quickly to build stacks and having the ramp in there to try to make sure that those smokestacks came down and were lined up correctly. So I really like that aspect of it. And I like the intake system to be picking up bottles off the ground. Again, you just have to watch for which ones you're getting when you go after the higher scoring ones. The detail in this robot is fantastic. If you look at the renders, you just glanced at it, you might think you're looking at the actual robot, not just a photograph.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Brandon, how do you feel about this one?
I think this one's a really well thought out design. They have the ability to both stack like directly on the floor, but the way that they actually stack up their smokestacks is they put a ramp right beside the human player slot on the wall and have the cans just go right down to the bottom of their stack. They lift it up, and it's really similar to one of those 2015 robots that basically had a ramp that feeds into their stacking mechanism. Really cool design. And the bottle mechanism that they used to pick the bottles up off the ground was one of the best looking mechanisms that I saw. Really clean design that I don't see it failing much in competition.
Absolutely. All right, Anand, how do you feel about this one?
As kind of a contrast to the bottle mechanism, I didn't like it. I liked the idea. I liked it a lot, and I think it would be one of the more effective ones. But it looked kind of flimsy because they only had a single crossbar, as far as I could see, a single crossbar going across the top, and that may not have withstood a hit because of that. Because like you could hit it from the side on the end, and it would just kind of flex, which isn't good. Stacker, but it was really nice, and the stacker was also beautiful. But with the can falling from that high of a height, they didn't seem to have a way to stop it from just coming down and then just popping out. So That wasn't great, but I mean, I think it would be fairly easy for them to add something to stop that from happening. And I mean, it's great use of space. Great use of space.
Absolutely. All right. So that brings us to the winner of the F4 CADathon. They know who they are. You don't. And that is Team 6, Orbit Torque, which is made up of Brian from Team 1360, Brant from 1477, and Chak from 4159. Their robot completes all portions of the game with a stacker that allows for a full 12-can stack, operating falling down cans and human player loading. Their ground fuel mechanism is capable of independently controlling each slot to ensure the bottles they pick up are legal and of maximum value. They also have a human player fuel cycler that allows them to quickly drop off fuel bottles after cycling the length of the field. So, Brandon, we're going to have you start. How do you feel about Team 6?
I think Team 6 was very thorough. I thought it was actually kind of funny. They submitted 37 pictures for their entire design. They went through and took screenshots of every single mechanism by itself. And it made it really easy to look through the robot and determine that it was really, really good. It has a nice mechanism for taking the fuel directly from the human player station, a really wide mechanism, so they don't have to worry about lining up perfectly or anything, and then delivering those over to the other side of the field. A really, really beautiful design overall. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Rupp, how do you feel about it?
Well, I like the use of the constant force springs on the stacking mechanism to kind of take care of some of that load as you got more and more cans in there, more and more of the stacks as you built that smokestack up. I am a little concerned about that stack getting unstable as it gets taller. So I think you could add a little something there, just maybe something so that as it builds up, there'd be kind of a restriction to keep it from falling over. But beside that, impressed with that and the attention to detail. I really like the mechanism for taking cans or taking the fuel cells from the human player station and delivering them. It's just a couple of simple pneumatics and off you go. And, I see that robot could cycle a lot and score a lot of those oil fuel cells.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Anand, you want to end us off here?
Yep, what everyone else said. Constant force spring especially was great. Lack of stabilizer, not so great, but the fact that they had the two completely independent bottle mechanisms, both of which could have made it a very, very, very good robot. I felt that was really the striking point of this design, is that if any one part of it fails, it can still do things, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. Redundancy is always great. And I mean, the detail on this thing was incredible. I'm not sure if the CAD for this robot will be made public after, but if it is, I totally recommend diving into it. I mean, they have detail from everything from, individually CADed chain all the way down to the lettering on the belts that they took from Vex. They actually literally put the Vex Pro logo on them, which is just incredible. The fact that not only was this done ever, but this was done in 3 days. So it was definitely an amazing effort from a team from all over the country, one being from Mr. Rip's team, 1477, but just actually all over the world. We have a team from Canada in there. But either way, it's a very well done mechanism, very well done robot. And I think that might bring us to our giveaway. Tyler, is it time?
We can do our giveaway. I'll go live here for a moment. Do want to thank everybody, especially F4 and Sam and everybody for doing the CADathon once again. What a fantastic turnout this time around, and we only hope for more and more guys. So if you like the CADathon, if you want to get more into it, make sure you tell people about this so we can get even more teams involved and get them in. So the winner for this is going to be Billy the Kid 123G. Congratulations. Please shoot me a PM and we will get your information out to Aussie Boards. And thank you so much to Aussie Boards for their contributions and support to the F4 CADathon and to those watching first updates now. Thank you, everybody.
All right. So before we get off here, we do have a couple little awards that the GDC wanted to give out. 2 awards to be specific. So one was the F4 Choice Award, which ended up being the same winner as the CADathon, Team 6, getting about 50% of the votes from F4 to be the winner. And then we also have the Magic Intake Award, which we decided to give to Team 25 for their continuing effort on making intakes magic. So thank you to the judges. It was really awesome for you being here. It was, it was an incredible amount of work to get through 45 of these robots and judge them individually. It cannot be understated how much we thank you. Also, thanks to Tyler Olds and the rest of the Fun crew for hosting this show because, again, it's just the amount of work that goes into this is a lot. And of course, thank you to the participants of this CADathon for making it happen, putting in work and learning some CAD. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I think it's time to go, but we get a quick last goodbye from the judges.
Yep. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah,
See you
thanks
around.
for having us on.
All right, guys.
It was
Have a
fun.
good
Bye,
night.
buddy, and happy 34th anniversary to my wife.
Go have dinner for it's the
I'm
normal
forgetting.
anniversary of this one. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good one.